So let's talk a little bit about something you'll write in a script called characters, character names. So there's not a whole lot to say about character names, but of course, they are character names. So you got to format them appropriately. Let's say Jonathan is talking. I'm going to talk a little bit through characters and parentheticals in this video. I'll briefly touch on dialogue, but I'm going to do a separate video for dialogue because dialogue is a bit more complex. But, character name, of course, we have, typically here's how we're going to do a scene. Got a scene heading, let's say, interior, messy bedroom, night. Sarah and Jonathan are sit on the bed. Jonathan says something. Let's give Jonathan some dialogue. Hello. I'm just gonna give them bad dialogue, so don't ever write hello. Just gonna put anything, right? Just show you kind of how it flows. Okay, so that's sort of how it kind of looks. So you can write character names in a script. Here we have these two people talking back and forth. Just a few little principles for character names. As you can see, the names are indented like that. They roughly get centered. It's not precise, but it's kind of ends up roughly in the center position. For that reason, we don't want really long names. We don't really need long names in script for a lot of reasons, but really simple rule of thumb is to keep character names short. Jonathan has a last name. I'm not going to use it, right? The audience might have heard the last name somewhere, but I'm picking a name, Jonathan, or I'm picking, Sarah, and I'm using it. Let's say we got, with Alex Toth is in the scene. Let's say for whatever reason they call, I'll use actually a friend of mine, John Toon. Because his name is John and my name is John, I call him Toon so that other people call me John and don't call him John, right? So typically we're going to, so here's something I would do in the script, okay? Because there is a character named Jonathan already, I want to take my other character named Jonathan and not call him Jonathan, right? I'm going to call John. John and Jonathan are actually not the same name at all. Jonathan is closer to Nathan than it is to John, but nobody really understands that, right? They sound the same. So Jonathan and John can't coexist in a script easily. They're going to get confused by the reader, especially by the skimmer, for one another. So you want to call one Jonathan, one Toon. Does that make sense? Or something like that. If I'm going to call John Toon this, and then I call him Toon here, from now on, he's Toon. Okay, Toon is Toon. I want to pick one name for a character to refer to them as, even if they have multiple names. The exception is, of course, if for some reason people keep calling a character by their full name. I don't know why they would do that, but maybe, that's what's happening. Similarly, let's say you have a character that has one thing that, so you keep it short, you keep it simple, you try not to confuse the reader by having initials that are the same. So if I got a J name, I don't want another J name. If I got an S name, I don't want another S name, right? If I got a T name, I don't want another T name. I want to keep it quick and clean and simple. There's a lot of reasons for that, but again, this is a practical document. Somebody who's skimming the document and not really fully reading it should be able to very quickly be able to pick out who's saying what when, okay? So a lot of reasons people skim these documents and don't really read them. You got to understand that this is a blueprint for a film. It is a literary document in the sense that it is something that it should be of high quality in terms of its writing, and it is something that is a story document, right? Like it's really telling a story, and you're a storyteller as much as you are a stylist here. In many respects, though, we got to always remember this is a blueprint for production, ideally, right? The first job of a script is to get somebody to buy it or at least sink money into it. It's an investing per se, in a manner of speaking. And then the later job of a script is to actually aid the production rather than hinder the production. So another simple thing to keep in mind here is that if I've got a character who has no name, then I want to refer to them I don't want to be calling it like man number 1, man number 2, man number 3, man number 4, right? That's going to get really annoying and confusing. It's even just confusing to read. And it's certainly confusing when we go to try to cast all these, men. What is better to do is, call a character by, if a character's not important, like if it's a side character that isn't really significant in the story, but is significant in the screen. Number one, we need to what we need to do is we need to try not to give people names if they're not important characters. So if a waiter comes to the table and is, waiting on them and then walks away, there's a couple things to consider there. One is that if at all possible, we can try to stop that person from speaking. If they speak, they have to be paid more money. So ideally, you don't want to have that person say anything if they don't matter to the scene. If they do matter to the scene and they should be saying something, maybe that waiter is going to be delivering a bunch of jokes. We're going to cast somebody who's actually really funny in that line. They're just in this one scene, but that's kind of our opportunity to get Paul Rudd in a cameo or something. If we're in that sort of scenario, what we're looking at is giving that person a name. Again, only if they're significant in the story. So we're going to call them like, funny waiter, or, uptight waiter, or something like this, right? And when they speak, we're going to say, uptight waiter, or something like that, right? We could just call them waiter if there's not another waiter in the script. We could call them Paul, if it's a person who's going to recur a couple times in the script, but isn't a super important figure. But if they're not super important in the story, we're going to try to give them a functional name, like they're the waiter, they're the plumber, they're whatever. And if there's more than one of them, like if there's a tall man and a short man, we'll call one tall man and one short man. You know what I mean? We'll give them a little descriptor to distinguish them from one another. Sometimes what I like to do in a script is I'll just give them like, I'll say something in the action. I'll say, the waiter walks up. He's got a blue tie on and keeps tugging it while he speaks. Then I'll just call the guy blue tie. And maybe, his buddy has got a red tie on, and we'll call him red tie. You know what I'm saying? Anything can be a character name. As long as it's consistent, it's short, it gives us a quick visual, ideally, if it's not a character who is significant in the story. If they're significant, they should have a name of some sort, of course. And the other thing to always keep in mind is that we want it to be consistent, specific, identifiable. At a glance, we know exactly who's doing what. Now, the other little quick thing to note is we have this other thing we can write, which is called parenthetical. Sometimes you'll hear it called a Riley, like this, Riley. That's where it comes from. Now, don't ever write that, please. Parentheticals, for the most part, should be avoided. But every once in a while, you may need to say something like this. Ideally, your dialogue should convey the emotion that the actor needs to play and through the subtext, and it should be clear, and the actor will make it clear. But, from time to time, you want to put a parenthetical in there to indicate to the actor how to read the line. Or once in a while, you'll put an action here, So sometimes you just want that action in the parenthetical because you don't want to write it as a separate, line of action and break the flow. You want to make clear that they're doing this as they're speaking. Those are instances you use parentheticals. For the most part, you want to avoid parentheticals. When somebody looks at your script, they should see almost no parentheticals. So that's sort of the nutshell. That's how to think about parentheticals and character names. And roughly how to format them in a script. Although, like I say, you want to primarily, please get some screenwriting software and rely on it to do the finer points of your formatting in terms of the margin.